to talk today about a number of things with you over a couple of segments. And one of the first things, I guess, would be the higher education impacts, the refunds, lawsuits, reopening strategies right now. And that's all being talked about daily here in Pennsylvania.
Gary, it's a huge issue, and I think for most of us it's something we don't think much about because our immediate needs are things like food and transportation and the like. But a lot of us have kids in school, and a lot of folks have paid tuitions in the $40,000 to $50,000 a year range so that their kids can get the on-campus experience at these expensive universities. With them closing their physical campuses and going to these online instruction models, there are lawsuits galore, as you could imagine, to try to do something to compensate these families and these students for the value for which they've paid and which they don't believe they're receiving.
And
so
you're absolutely right.
Issue. There's
something that a lot of if you don't have
Go
someone in college right now, you probably aren't giving that a lot of thought, but it really is a major issue. And are you getting, the bang for the buck? I mean, that is still part of the whole process here.
Hundreds of millions of dollars at stake in this one. The students have come up, well, I shouldn't say the students, but their attorneys have talked about things such as unjust enrichment, claiming that it's unfair for schools to profit from services they don't deliver. The straightforward things are, of course, housing and food and those sorts of things, and some of those refunds have already been processed. But the educational piece is really the most of it. So, it's the unjust enrichment, diminution of value. Colleges, on the other hand, are fighting back and saying that they should be excused from these obligations because the pandemic and the government shutdown is something that they didn't anticipate, and it's more or less an act of God. So one of the following few months, especially if some of the universities in states that didn't close down, for example, in Arizona, the universities there, it's, forward, here we go, September, come on back.
Yeah, and give us a check again. Yeah.
Exactly.
We're going to keep our eye on that one, Joel, because that's going to be huge. And again, the number of lawsuits that are out there right now, you almost can't count. There's so many of them. You're a guy that deals in statistics all the time. And, one of the things that I know you do is you dig down questionable counts, the impact on trust when you have various counts in this COVID-19 time. Data-driven decisions. We've heard a lot from the governor about, quote-unquote, data-driven decisions. And benchmarks for that. So I wanted you to get into that particular area this morning as well.
Okay, Gary, I've been following this stuff since the Department of Health began to publish their statistics. And the benchmark that keeps coming up is this 50 new cases per 100,000 over the past 14 days. That's been the number. York, for example, has been well below the benchmark for the last 11 days now, and yet we remain red, whatever that is supposed to mean. And you got into this a little bit this morning earlier. Going from red to yellow doesn't mean business as usual.
Correct.
It's a very strict regimen of controls, even in the so-called yellow zone. Here's something to think about. In the last couple days, as I followed the statistics for every county, I noticed that Lycoming, which was put into the yellow category in the first phase, they're in the north central part, just went red again. Now what?
Yeah. And I wonder...
They're right in the middle of the north central region, and they just went red. Do they get... whoops, sorry, you got to have a do-over on that one.
And I'm not sure people are willing to go back to that. I'm wondering what kind of pushback you're going to get on being yanked back into that because, the yellow at least says, well, there's a light at the end of the tunnel somewhere. We're not sure if that'll ever happen or where it'll be, but there's at least a light at the end of the tunnel. When you go back into red, you say, oh, sorry, we just decided we're going to lock you down again.
Well, does the metric mean anything? It was supposed to be a necessary condition.
Well, in York County, it's 40. We're at 42 per 100,000. So you would say, okay, well, if 50 per 100,000, which is the metric that the governor and the Secretary of Health laid out the other week, if that's the metric, then we qualify. But apparently, there's other stuff. Well, what is the other stuff?
We don't know. That's where the subjective part comes in. So that's where I'm looking at data-driven. Well, what data? The data that you've put in front of us is used inconsistently, and the data that you won't disclose is behind door number 3, I guess. I'm not sure what to do with that.
Well, Joel, if I'm teaching, let me just throw something in real quick. Let me throw something in real quick here. If I'm teaching a class and I say the sky is red, or let's say the sky is green, and that's data driven, and then I go on to the next statement about something else, what kid with a right mind isn't going to raise his hand and say, well, what data is driving that? I said, no, it's just data-driven. That's all you really need to know. Well, that's kind of what the governor's doing to us right now and saying, well, it's data-driven. Well, what data? Well, it's just data-driven. We have experts here. We have people that we're going to. Well, I have said 8 million times, I make it 8,000,001. If you, as a representative of the government, who are the people, are not transparently telling us every single thing about how you are acting and what you're acting on in terms of making decisions on our behalf, then it's bad policy. How's that, Joel?
There's no better way to put it than that.
WSBA Morning News with Gary Sutton, back with Joel Sears, president of the York County Taxpayers Council. And, Joel, you were going to make a point there, and go ahead. We'll pick it up again with you.
Yeah, just a quick point about the illustration. Somebody goes to the class and says the sky is green and you have to trust me. Verification is critical. All you have to do is get out of your chair, pull the curtains open, and take a look. Mm-hmm. One of the problems that I have with statistics is that they're not dependable, and I don't believe they're reliable. That's just my opinion. I've seen these things jump, Gary, in some cases by hundreds in terms of cases from day to day, or even hundreds in deaths from day to day. I don't understand that. It must be a problem with classification, but if you don't trust the underlying data, then what good is a data-driven decision?
Yeah, and that's... You know, one of the things that I was thinking about this morning, Joel, when you melt all of this down with regard to the mutiny that we're seeing in York County right now and the governor's reaction yesterday, what it really comes down to is not so much that necessarily people don't like the governor. I see what people are saying sometimes, but has it just gotten down to the point that we don't trust that Governor Wolf's way is the only way to do this? Is that what am I making an understatement there? What are your thoughts on that and this whole mutiny, more or less? Governor Wolf playing the part of Captain Bligh and York County playing the part of Mr. Christian, right?
Well, it's more than York County, obviously. What I've seen published by state legislators,
Butler, Lebanon, Cumberland, yeah,
both chambers, up and down the line, county DA, sheriff.
Did we lose Joel there? Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, we got you now. Go ahead, Joel. Yeah, I have you now. Go ahead.
Every one of the letters that I've seen, whether it comes from a legislator, a county commissioner, a DA, or a sheriff, starts with a reference to their constitutional oath. Mm-hmm. And that's what they're trying to tell us. They have a constitutional duty to uphold and defend the constitutions of both the United States and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Correct.
And in those oaths of offices, their justification for doing what they're doing. But there's no constitutional basis for what the governor's done. Gary, everybody I think would admit that, or I would hope that they would agree that in the first couple of weeks of this pandemic, extraordinary action on the part of the executive branch is justified. But then there's a point at which we need to come together and talk about solutions that meet the test of the Constitution. The Constitution was not suspended on the 15th of March. It was not suspended, and I think that's probably what's set up the tension. The governor's moving in a direction of tighter and tighter control. The General Assembly is trying to move in a direction of legislative activity, which sets the stage for let's say, even a future of how we're going to deal with this and other pandemics down the road. Maybe this is a wake-up call that says we'll never have life as normal. Look at the green zone definitions.
Oh, yeah.
That's the best the governor's done at this point, and that still means social distancing and masks and all kinds of other protections. There's nothing beyond that.
Yeah, you can't, and I think the concern that people have is that, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and that in a long term, people who have power concentrated in the hands of a few kind of get to like it, and they start to change the whole way that we're governed. And when you look at Article 1, Section 2 of our Constitution here in the state of Pennsylvania, it's very short and very simple. It says all power is inherent in the people, and all free governments are founded on their authority, the authority of the people, and are instituted for their peace, safety, and happiness. Well, are we doing the kind of policy right now for our peace, safety, and happiness? Some would say safety is good, peace and happiness maybe not so much, but for the advancement of these ends, it goes on to say, they have at all times, it's again the people, they have at all times, at all times, not sometimes, not sometimes that aren't declared emergencies, all times, an inalienable and indefeasible right to alter, reform, or abolish their government in such manner as they think proper. Would that also mean the policies that are being passed to them by their representatives when how to live? Your thoughts on that?
Gary, you've said it. They're supposed to represent the folk. There could be some really serious issue with the masses who have a completely wrong idea about how to run the situation. And we've had that in the past. We've had majorities who wanted to continue racist policies. We've had majorities who wanted to continue not universal suffrage, but vote by property owners or by men only. And it took legislative reform to change that. We don't suspend the rights of the individuals, but we retain control in the electorate. That's the idea. Here we have a situation where the chambers aren't even, I shouldn't say the chambers, but the divisions in government. The executive and the legislative are at loggerheads. And for us to get any sane way, they've got to start talking to one another, and they have to craft policy to the real problem.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we're going to get into tomorrow with the Speaker of the House and others as well. Joel, I know we didn't cover everything today, but some pretty good stuff that you strode over. We're going to get back to more ripples in the pond in a few days, and I thank you for joining us this morning, as always, and all the homework you do to get ready for this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, buddy. Take care. Joel Sears, president of the York County Taxpayers Council, here on WSBA.